Okay, I'm just waiting for UDK to open up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you just how to make a simple door, make a simple texture, how to add a little bit of functionality and some sounds. So if nothing else, you've got enough to be dangerous for next week. And you can start to think about some of these things because it'll introduce you to some of the more basic concepts that we haven't gone over yet. Come on. Okay. So I'm just going to do my standard, just new level, just to make life easy. And I'm going to open up the content browser. And we talked a little bit about different assets that are in the content browser. What you do is you have filtering you can do here. And if I do static mesh, what it does is it'll only show me the pre-made geometry that exists in the scene. Now there's different folders. There's an engine folder, there's a UDK game folder, and there's a new package. The engine is basically the one that I'm going to use for this, but all the cool stuff that you want is probably in UDK. And then if you go down to UT3 environment, that's where a lot of the cool stuff is. So just to let you know, you can just kind of go through and look at, but these are the folders that are inside the UDK. So the reason why I picked this one is there's a generic box right here called the text prop cube. So nothing exciting. I'm just going to bring that and drag that into the scene. And now you see how I have my box. There's nothing else going on. Pretty basic. Now the neat thing about this is even though this is a pre-made box, it's a static mesh as opposed to a brush. So we can do things like animate it. You can't animate a brush. You can make this physics-based. So there's ways you can get this to move around. You can throw it around, build blocks, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot more benefits that you can do, and you can also make this in another program and bring it in. So what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can override the texture before we do anything else. So if I go back to Content Browser and I switch from static mesh and I go to materials, there's a lot of materials, and actually I'm going to go into the environment, the one I just told you about, and see what we can pull up as far as different textures to bring in. Now some of these are seamless. Like this one, you can see is seamless, this one. But this one, if I apply this onto this surface, it's going to look really weird because what's called the UV mapping, which is how the texture is assigned, is screwed up. So if I come in to any object and I pull up its properties, which the shortcut is F4, and I go and I open up the properties, on the very top is a static mesh actor. And below that, there's an option for rendering, and there's an option for material. And you can override a material on any of the objects that exist in the scene. You cannot physically change the material that's the default, like you can't, like the normal way that you can assign material. What that'll do is it'll corrupt the file because you can't edit any of the original assets that come. You can only put overlay modifies. So what I would do is I'd highlight, let's say, this floor texture, and then I hit the arrow, and I hit assign, and now you see how I have that stone texture assigned to it. So this is a really handy way that you can use really basic shapes to start to do stuff. So let's go down and find something that probably looks a little bit more like a door, like this shape. And I'm going to highlight that, hit the arrows to make sure you highlight it there, and pull it in. And now if we look at our scene, you can see now I have this door. Now the problem with this door is I only want this to repeat one time. I don't want it to repeat 4 times. So I can go in and I can look at this material, but this is an original material. I can't make any changes to it. So in here, this is the actual material editor, and it looks kind of like there's a bunch of stuff, but the big things to be aware of is there's a thing called the normal map. Does anyone know what a normal map is? Does anyone know what a bump map is? A bump map, yeah. Yeah, it basically creates the illusion. Let's see if I can turn off. Let's just break link. Okay, you see how there's that bump on the surface? That is being rendered by this map right here. So what it does is it creates the illusion of 3D using a 2D map, is how it works. as opposed to the diffuse surface, which is basically giving us the picture. So every material, and I'll just go basically the ones that we're worrying about is diffuse, normal, and specular. Specular is the shininess on an object. Diffuse is the basic color, and normal is your normal basic one. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our own texture. So I can't change this one. So if I right-click, I can do a new material, and I'm going to create my own package. So I'll just probably do something like Snyder Assets, and this will be a material, and I'm just going to call this door material 1, and hit OK. And here is my blank material. There's nothing in it right now. So the way that materials are built is, and you can see if I go all the way down, there's a thing called a package. Now a package is a pre-made, it's a collection of assets. So anytime that you make your own thing, you need to create your own package. So when you submit your game, you have to submit your game and the package, the two files. So, and this one I don't have saved at all, and that's why it has the asterisk. If I go to right-click and I do save on this package, I'll get a prompt to say where do I want to save it. I usually just save it in the custom folder with everything else. But you can see Snyder Assets.upk and save. I need to submit both of those when I bring in the homework for someone to see it. And now that I saved it, it's actually in the hierarchy with everything else. So if I go to Maps, there's my Snyder Assets. It's actually inside. There's a custom folder, and there's my asset. So this is blank. There's nothing in it. So we need to start to add elements. So instead of looking at materials, let's look and see what types of pre-made textures there are. I'll go back to Environment and pull that up. So let's go back to Environments. And here are basically 2D textures, and you can bring in your own textures if you want. The only rule is they have to be based on towers of 2. So let's see if I can go through and find the floor one. It's not that floor. You can see there's a lot of textures with this. Okay, so there's the floor. So there we go. That's the texture that we saw used. So I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to go into diffuse, and you can either pull these up this way or you can right click, and I'm going to do texture sample, and it'll automatically pull in that texture I have loaded up, and I'm going to hook that, the black, which is the RGB, all the color, up to the diffuse. So as long as you're under the black up to the diffuse. Now you can see I have that basic part of the shape. And also, I can come in and you can see I just dragged this, so this is another way that you can do it, which might be more intuitive. I'm going to hook this one up to the normal map, and the instant you did that, I don't know, it's kind of subtle, but it added all the 3D shape to it. And then I can also add some shininess and just run the specularity, so now it takes the blue value off this, and it adds a little bit of sheen. So you can see pretty quickly I've duplicated. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. So I'll save this, and now I'm going to assign this material. So find it, Snyder Asset, and go back to all. And now you can see there's my material. So I'm going to go back and open up this item and go and do select, highlight this, go in and change the selection. And now you don't see any difference at this point, but it's the actual, you can see Snyder Assets, so it's a new material. Now I want to change the tiling, which is how it's mapped. So the way you can do that is you can actually go in and change the mapping of different objects. So I'll go into texture, what is it, UVs, vector, color coordinates, position objects. Sorry, just let me find the texture coordinates. There we go. And I'm going to run this into here. And you can see right now it's taking the texture and it's doing 1 by 1. So it's taking that picture and assigning 1 to the width and 1 to the height. If I change that to 0.5 by 0.5, and we go to save that. And then we do the same to the normal map. And let's do a box so you can kind of see how now it's a single. So you can increase and decrease the size just using the coordinate. So I'll save this and close that out. And now you'll see how I have a single object for this that's set. And I'm just going to make this look a little bit more like a door, make it a little skinnier, and now we have that kind of set and saved, and we use that as a door. Next thing I'm going to add, just real quick, and I'll just do it with a brush just to show you, is adding a floor. So I'm just going to take the standard builder brush and make it big, and make it long, and make it skinny, and move this down, and do an additive, and now we have our floor. Now, you don't have to use textures. The one thing is you just want to do flat surfaces. What you can do is we'll create another new material. I'll just go through this process again. I'll show you a slightly different option. So I'm going to do right-click, New Material, and I'll call this Materials again, and I'll call this just Gray. And for the diffuse channel, you can add values. So if I go into constants, I can do a constant 3 vector, which is basically just 3 numbers. And I can hook this up. And right now, there's the 3 different values. If I set each one of these to 0.5, see now I have red. So these are RGB values. And 0.5, now you see I have a gray color. So if I just do a save on that, I can take that and I can assign that to the floor, and now I have a gray floor. So if you just want to do basic colors, you can just make one of those gray textures and assign it to your entire world, as opposed to dealing with the default texture. It drives you crazy. And just to show you, just to demonstrate, just to show you what the normal map does again, and show you another thing, I could go find a normal map. So let's grab a texture. Let's go back down to environments. And let's find, there's a concrete here. I'm just going to grab this normal map right there. And let's drag this into the scene. And we can close this out. And click on Control key and move that. And hook this up to normal map. And the instant I do that, you see how it starts to create the, even though it's a single color, it creates the illusion that it's stone. So normal maps are really cool in that sense. I'm just going to save this and close it out. And now I don't have a light on, so at this point you don't see it, but the instant I change over to lighting, let me add the dominant directional light, add actor, add dominant directional light, and then rotate this globally. Come on. There we go. I'm just trying to get it so we can start to see it being really wonky. Okay. Well, anyway, I should probably do it slightly different, but you see how you kind of get the look where you get the different surface and those types of things. Now, the tiling for the texture right now is if I take this ground plane that I created, let me get the builder brush out of the way and just show you something. Okay, if I grab this, if I go to scale this in and out,